My pleasure to welcome you to the Italian Cultural Institute for an evening of art and music. We are going to celebrate the brilliance of two artists, two brothers, Carlo Montarsolo, painter, and you see some of his wonderful works on the walls here. He was a painter. We can categorize him as a member of the naturalist abstract movement in Italy in the post-war period. His brother, Paolo, was a singer, and he performed several times at San Francisco Opera. He taught at the Maryland Opera program, and we're going to hear some music, see some pictures of him. And to do all of this, we have actually, our team has created a theatrical performance, and I'm very eager to see it because there were rehearsals with closed doors and I couldn't see anything. So let me just thank a few people before we get started. First of all, Federico Montarsolo, who was he is the initiator and the soul of this initiative. He's the head of the Montarsolo Foundation. Its mission is precisely to disseminate and to increase the awareness of these two artists. And he has organized similar events in Italy, in Rome and in Naples. And we hope that he will be in other countries and other cities. And then I would like to thank Federica Batterusso, who is also part of the organizing team. I would like to acknowledge the presence of our Consul General, Lorenzo Ortona. And then we have the performers. Eugene Brancoveano, baritone, who is going to play the role of Paolo, of course, the singer. We have Baker Peoples on the piano. Thank you. By the way, you can read their biographies here in the program. And then we have Steve Siegelman, who plays the role of Carlo, and who also translated and adapted the text, and also was instrumental in doing many other things that it would be too long to list. Thank you, Steve. And finally, Alessandra Valente, who is the writer of the text, and she's a theater person, and she was the director, the stage director of this performance. Thank you. Thank you also to the Maryland Opera program for their support, the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Italian Ministry of Cultural Heritage for their patronage. Thank you to Italia Cargo and Tenuta di Tavignano for their sponsorship. And thanks also to Unitel for the film clips and to the San Francisco Opera Archive for their production stills. So thank you again for joining us, and I'm sure we'll have some fun. Thank you.
Paolo. Ma vieni giù di lì. Okay, fine. Come down from there. It's time to go.
I'm not coming down. Never, ever.
Why not?
Because I love it up here.
Who are you? The Baron in the trees?
It's far too tragic. I am just me. Up here, right now. Me in a tree.
There you go, rhyming again.
Was I? I didn't even notice.
So why can't you be you down here?
Because up here, I can see everything. The view, the sea, everything.
All right, I'm coming up.
Bravo, Carlo. Take my hand.
You're right. It's beautiful up here.
We can go now.
I really should. The train leaves in 20 minutes. Milano is waiting.
On one condition. Next time, when we come here, you take me all the way to the top of the volcano.
This is the story of two brothers, two artistic giants who made an unforgettable impression on everyone who shared some part of their journey through the 20th century. Their students, their friends, their family, and the thousands of people who knew them only through their work, but loved them all the same. From the time they were children, their father pushed the boys to try their hand at acting, music, and painting. And remarkably, each started out on the track that would ultimately bring fame to the other. Carlo was a talented baritone, Paolo a promising painter. But when they were still young, they switched paths. And that early exchange gave them a profound sympathetic connection, an understanding of one another that went far beyond brotherly love. Throughout their lives, they passionately promoted each other's careers and did whatever they could to intertwine their lives and their work. They were brothers by birth, but more importantly, they became brothers by choice.
To my friend, the esteemed journalist and essayist, Antonio Guidetti. Caro Antonio, my brother, Paolo, the greatest opera singer Naples ever produced, after maybe Caruso, is mortified by how little attention is paid to Mozart in our hometown of Portici. You must remedy this situation. Paolo is a great interpreter of Mozart. He has sung at La Scala, at the Metropolitan Opera, at the San Francisco Opera, Così fan tutte, Don Giovanni. He sang Le Nozze di Figaro with Von Karajan 10 times. Invite him. He will say yes, and you won't be sorry.
In scores of similar letters, interviews, and writings, the brothers sang each other's praises throughout their lives, as much for the depth of their humanity as for their artistic talents. Carlo, the older of the two, was born in Umbria in 1922, but moved at an early age to Portici, at the foot of Mount Vesuvius, just south of Naples, where Paolo was born 3 years later in 1925. Carlo would remain deeply rooted in the solidity and austerity of Umbria, even as he thrived on the passion and chaos of Naples. Paolo drew his strength from the beauty of the landscape around him, especially the trees, which were his sanctuary as a child, and his muse throughout his life.
La cambia caffè, voi non sapete, no davvero, no! Uditevi e facete!
You know, I really owe my whole career to my brother, Carlo, who, without even telling me, took the liberty of enrolling me in the national scholarship competition at the Conservatorio della Scala when I was 13 years old.
My brother was a bit of a rebel. He spent his childhood climbing the trees in the countryside around Portici. We had a huge collection of slingshots. And I had to be very careful when I approached that tree to tell him that I'd gotten him entered in the competition at La Scala.
I thought, Milano? Do they even have trees there?
But Paolo went, and his life changed forever. He won the competition, and with it, a full scholarship to the La Scala school.
Numero 640. Montarsolo Paolo.
Dormiro sol sotto la volta nera, dormiro sotto la volta nera, la velo dell'escuridad. Se certo regal avete certo te invece nei cor giammai no, quel cor chiuso a me, amor per me non ha, amor per me non
I won the competition with that huge dramatic aria from Don Carlo, and everyone thought, if this pimply little fellow can do that, he will be a great dramatic bass. And I thought so too. But then, while I was at the school, they started a student company, I Cadetti della Scala. And we did all of these 17th and 18th century operas, you know, the Cimarosas, Cherubinis, and the bass was always a buffo, a comic role. Well, I was the school's one and only bass, so I gave buffo a try. After one of the shows, Antonio Gringhelli, the director, the god of La Scala, came up to me and said, Montarsolo, complimenti vivissimi. And that was the moment. I was a basso buffo.
Meanwhile, 16-year-old Carlo stayed in Portici, following his own dream, filling his canvases with Vesuvian landscapes, winning the prestigious Ludi Juvenilis Prize with a painting inspired by the nature poems of D'Annunzio, and maturing steadily as an artist, always eager to explore and share, like an excited tourist on a journey through life.
Well done, Carlo. It's plain to see how hard you study, but you are an artist, and you must paint.
Those were the words of the great economist, Epicharmo Corbino, on awarding Carlo a degree with highest honors in economics at Federico II University in Naples. That degree was the fulfillment of a dream, but the dream wasn't Carlo's. His father had pushed him to study economics, and although he distinguished himself with his original thinking and brilliant scholarship, even his teachers could see the truth. You can become an economist, but you are born an artist. Railways and bridges, ironwork and anchors, crowds, waves, and vast expanses of space. Lava and fire, rain and snow, flowers and leaves flooding the canvas. Ink, oils, and pastels raining down and washing away a landscape, only to transform it into another one, in a continuous exploration of abstraction and reality, technique and experimentation, control and serendipity. This is how Carlo painted, his feet planted firmly on the ground, his hands and arms spreading like wings, ready to lift him skyward over the land, the sea, the volcano, and the treetops.
Entering the studio of a great artist is like stepping out of the darkness of everyday life and walking into a great light.
That's what Carlo wrote in his book, An Artist Talks About Art. He called his attic studio the rooftop of Europe. It was an enchanted treehouse where his painting was inspired by sweeping views of the coast, the song of the sea, and the perfume of orange blossoms. As the art critic Renato Civelli wrote, he traveled the world restlessly and relentlessly, from Egypt to Helsinki to the peaks of the Andes, absorbing emotional energy. But it was the shores of the Mediterranean that would always remain his language, the color, the line, the visual poetry that expressed his cosmic vision. His first trip to Belgium in the late 1950s was a turning point that broadened Carlo's artistic horizons. He immersed himself in the work of the great modern masters, starting with Braque and Picasso, taking in their technique, their sensibilities, their emotional impact, and bringing it all back to Naples, reinventing every lesson, every avant-garde impulse into an original Italian visual language of his own. Meanwhile, Paolo too was looking beyond Italy for the inspiration and experiences that would deepen his character and shape his artistic expression.
Madamina, il catalogo è questo, e le belle che amò il padron mio, un catalogo lieti io partio, osservate, leggete con me, osservate, leggete con me. In Italia 640, in Alemania 231, 100 in Francia e in Turchia 91, ma in Spagna son già 1.300. 1.300. Ma fra queste contadine, cameriere cittadine, al contessi baronesse, marchesane, principesse e mammone d'ogni grado, d'ogni forma, d'ogni età, d'ogni forma, d'ogni età. In Italia 640, in Alemania 231, 100 in Francia e in Turchia 91, ma in Spagna son già 1.300. 1.300. Ma tra queste contadine, cameriere cittadine, vi contesse contesse, baronesse, marchesane, principesse, e madonne d'ogni grado, d'ogni forma, d'ogni età, d'ogni forma, d'ogni età, d'ogni forma, d'ogni età. Nella bionda e la l'usanza di lodar la gentilezza nella bruna la costanza nella bianca la altezza. Vuol d'inverno la grassotta, vuol d'estate la grotta, e la grande maestosa, e la grande la piccina, 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 e ogni or vezzosa, e ogni or vezzosa, e ogni or vezzosa, delle vecchie fa conquista per piacer di porre in lista sua passion predominante e la giovin principiante. Non si picchia se sia ricca, se sia brutta, se sia bella, se sia ricca, brutta, se sia bella, purché porti la gonnella. Voi sapete quel che fa, voi sapete quel che fa, purché porti la gonnella. Voi sapete quel che fa, voi sapete quel che fa, quel che fa, quel che fa. Voi sapete quel che fa.
Over the course of his career, Paolo's catalogo of artistic triumphs would include Glyndebourne, Salzburg, Berlin, Paris, Vienna, London, Geneva, Moscow, Santiago, Buenos Aires, and Barcelona. And he would perform a staggering 128 leading roles in such operas as Le Nozze di Figaro, Don Pasquale, L'Elisir d'Amore, L'Italia in Algeri, and La Cenerentola.
Polli femminili. Vergogna, mi vergogno. Un magnifico figlio sogno. Mi veniste a sconcertare. professo mortificare degli figli d'un barone. Via silenzio ed attenzione. State il sogno a meditar. Mi sognate al fosco chiaro, mi sognate al fosco chiaro un bellissimo somaro, un somaro ma solenne, quando tratto qualche portento sulle spalle del soggetto, sulle spalle del soggetto disputavano le penne e in aria scivolò. E diceva campanile come così per po', e diceva campanile come così per po'. Si sentivano per di sotto le campane a dindogar, dindon, 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 dindon. Col ciciccio giù di botto mi veniste a risvegliar, col ciciccio giù di botto mi veniste a risvegliar, col ciciccio giù di botto mi veniste a risvegliar, col ciciccio giù, col ciciccio giù, col ciciccio giù, col ciciccio giù, mi faceste risvegliar, col ciciccio giù, col ciciccio giù, col ciciccio giù, col ciciccio giù, mi faceste risvegliar, mi faceste risvegliar, mi faceste risvegliar. Quando un sogno s'intrecciato, ecco il simbolo spiegato. Quando un sogno s'intrecciato, ecco il simbolo spiegato. La campana suona festa, allegrezza in casa è questa. Quelle belle siete voi, quel campana leve a Dio. Resta l'asino di poi, ma quell'asino son io. Chi mi guarda vede chiaro che il somaro è il genitor, il somaro è il genitor, il somaro è il genitor. Bellissima regina, l'unellata viverà, e mi dopo una donnina divina poi piacerà. Un piccolo di qua, servo, 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 un babolo di qua, servo, 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 e la gloria mia sarà, sì, sì, la gloria mia sarà. Bellissima regina, l'unellata viverà, e mi dopo una donnina divina poi piacerà. Un piccolo quale, popolo là, un piccolo quale, popolo là, e la gloria mia sarà, un piccolo quale, popolo là, un piccolo quale, popolo là, e la gloria mia sarà. Bellissima regina, non ne l'altro liberà, e l'inganna ora del prima di la forte piacerà, e la gloria mia sarà, e la gloria mia sarà, mia sarà, mia sarà, mia sarà, mia sarà.
It was Cenerentola and the role of Don Magnifico that first brought him here to San Francisco in 1969. And he returned many times over the next 22 years to star in Don Pasquale and L'Elisir d'Amore and to direct several other San Francisco opera productions. As a beloved instructor in the Mirala program, he helped shape the voices of some of the greatest young singers of the late 20th century. As he told one American journalist in 1981,
I must say, I admire very much the American audiences. Because even if they don't understand everything, they follow so well. I don't know how they do it, but really, they laugh at the right moment. They follow like they know Italian. This is the kind of preparation that sometimes in Italy we don't bring to the theater. We follow with our ears, but here, because they don't know the language, they read the libretto. They want to know, I must say. I think the American audience is one of the best audiences in the world. In Italy, they go and enjoy, but often they are shy, especially at La Scala. They are in this beautiful temple of art and music, and they are a bit intimidated, paurosi. They are afraid to laugh or to applaud, because someone might look at them and think, ma che cosa stai facendo? Non è il momento giusto. What are you doing? It's not the right time. And everyone is thinking the same thing, so nobody moves. If there is no clack, no one dares to clap. It's terrible for the singers. You can sing an aria and no, it was good, and you might get to the end of the aria and no reazione at all.
Paolo was being modest. He knew how to get a reaction, and he had a sixth sense for reading an audience and responding with spontaneous improvisation.
You know, commedia è più difficile che la tragedia. It's much harder than tragedy. If you're a buffo, you can sometimes do serious dramatic roles, but it doesn't follow that if you're a dramatic bass that you can switch to buffo parts. You need timing for buffo. And if you don't have a sense for it, it's instantly obvious. You can tell if the talent is there or not, because it's not something you learn. It's something you're born with it. Like for me, at the end of Don Magnifico's big aria, Mira Polli Femminili, during one rehearsal I was feeling frustrated, and instead of throwing my pillow into the air, as I always did, I threw it all the way into the pit right at Maestro Abbado. And you know what? He said,
Why did you do that in the performance?
so I kept it in. And the moment came and the audience, as you can imagine, another time, I was doing Leporello in Glyndebourne, and at that time, in Covent Garden, there was another Don Giovanni with another Leporello. So this one critic reviewed both productions. I won't say what he said about my esteemed colleague, the other Leporello, but what he said about me was, we saw in Montarsolo how human he was. This made me happy. You know, it's easy to play for laughs, to resort to gags, to play to the gallery. But it's much better to do comedies that comes from the inside. When the audience laughs just because of the situation, the human dilemma, this is what I dream of.
This kind of vulnerability and humanity was what made Paolo unique among his mid-century colleagues, most of whom still tended to perform with an old world sense of grandiose artifice. Like the great Italian comic film actors Totò and Alberto Sordi, Paolo inhabited his roles with a kind of humble, everyman integrity. Spontaneity and sometimes even a kind of volcanic volatility, these were qualities both the brothers shared, qualities that came from their Neapolitan roots. And their love for Naples remained constant throughout their careers.
Sti parole amare, perché me parli o cuore me turmiente Catarì, tu non te scurda Cantate date o core, Catari, non te scurda. Catari che veni a dicere, su parlate a me, da spase me. Tu non ci pensi a stu dolore mie, tu non ci pensi non te ne Core ingrato, dai miliate vita mia, tutte passate e non c'è piense più.
Loved Naples, but it often returned their love with a core ingrato, an ingrateful heart.
To my dear friend, the journalist and playwright Vittorio Pagliotti. Mio caro Pagliotti, I'm writing to you from Montevideo on my way to New York for a lecture at Columbia University. You're a writer. Will you write a little story about a Neapolitan painter who must travel the world like an immigrant to find the love and respect that no longer exist for him in Italy? And yet, I still, the more I travel, feel the love and nostalgia for our Napoli.
Writing to another friend about the urban renewal of Piazza del Plebiscito in Naples.
Alas, Antonio, terrifying things are happening here. Money wasted, beauty desecrated, the wit and wisdom, the irony of our great comics forgotten and ignored. And as for art, imagine if my brother, Paolo, the greatest opera singer Naples ever produced since maybe Caruso, had remained in the chorus of the Teatro di San Carlo. Well, as far as Naples is concerned, he might as well have.
But even if Paolo wasn't always fully recognized at home, he traveled the world singing on all its grandest stages, with Naples always in his heart.
You know, opera buffa was born in Naples from the loins of commedia dell'arte, from a tradizione di satirica, from a tradition of satire, physical comedy, and even vulgarity beyond what we could ever do today. And it came straight from the Neapolitan people. In Naples, every conversation, every argument, every lament or celebration or seduction is performed like a little play. The Neapolitan doesn't speak. He performs the role of the bicker, the trickster, the clown, as if unconsciously sensing that he's always being watched. The De Filippo brothers, Naples' great geniuses of the theater, captured this perfectly. And I too, without even realizing it, have brought it to my characters. I have brought something Napolitano to all of them, all over the world. But back at home, well, as they say, nemo profeta in patria. No man is a prophet in his own land. Though in 1998 I was given a prize at the Cappella Reale of Portici at an event commemorating a concert that had happened in that very chapel on that very same organ, played by a certain 14-year-old Mozart himself. And you know how I love Mozart.
Son partiti.
Di partenza crudelissima.
Fate core, carissime figliuole. Guardate, da lontano vi fan cenno con mano i cari sposi.
Un viaggio mia vita. Potei, come veloce sei affrettata, già sparisce, già non si vede più. E faccio il cielo cambia prospero corso, già che il campo giunga confortunati ospiti.
E a voi saldi gli avanti, e a me gli amici.
As the brothers built their careers abroad, their paths often crossed, and they shared and fueled each other's successes.
To the esteemed director of the Istituto Italiano di Cultura of Hamburg. Dear Sir, here is how the event should go. In mid-May 1988, a few days before or after the performance of Don Pasquale by my brother, Paolo, the greatest opera singer Naples ever produced, at Punto, we should hold a press conference where we can tell our story and talk about our favorite subject, our Vesuvian roots. Paolo can manage in English. Per me servirà un interprete. I will need an interpreter.
Dear sir, I propose that you bring my brother Carlo to the Istituto Italiano di Cultura di Tel Aviv to conduct a seminar on modern art at your institute. He did this in Palermo and it was a big hit, especially with the young people. There was a crowd of
500.
500. We should time this seminar to coincide with my visit to Tel Aviv to direct Il Barbiere di Siviglia with young artists from the Metropolitan Opera of New York.
Vesuvius, or as Carlo always called it, La Montagna, loomed large in his work. Throughout his life, his satchel filled with brushes and paint, he would climb the mountain, sketch the mountain, commune with the mountain. In the words of one Italian art critic, Montarsolo places Vesuvius in the distance, watching over the arid landscape. He returns again and again to its shape, its shadows, its stratified layers, to this wild and seductive landscape filled with colors of sulfur and smoke, fire and earth. These are timeless images with the power to evoke the origins of the universe and the mysteries of antiquity. His lava flows are pure emotion, pure color, without perspective, without location. These are not paintings. They become poems, novels of land and sea, stories of color and sound.
Zimarra senti, io resto al pian tuo a scendere il sacro monte ordevi, le mie grazie ricevi, mai non curvasti l'ogor ai ricchi ed ai potenti, posor nelle tue tasche, come in antri tranquilli, filosofie poeti. Ora che i giorni lieti fuggir addio, fedele amico mio. Addio, addio.
Our story, Paolo, fedele amico mio, how quickly it has flown by. But oh, how brightly our flames have glowed.
Carlo wrote those words to his brother in 2004. The next year, he went to Paolo's home, the Villa del Castagno in Monte Compatri, amid the woods and volcanic lakes of the Castelli Romani hills, to celebrate what would be his last birthday. And there he remained in the company of his brother until his death a few months later. In the words of his friend, the great essayist Antonio Ghirelli, his love of the world, nature, sunshine, and the Mediterranean erupts from his canvases. His happy colors make the eyes and the heart rejoice like a message of optimism, a statement of faith. Indeed, Carlo came to be known as Il Pittore della Felicità, the painter of happiness. And if Carlo was the painter of happiness, Paolo was the voice of color, light, and joy. Just 1 year later, in 2005, he joined his older brother in death.
Paolo, ma vieni giù di lì.
No, non scenderò mai.
E perché no?
Non c'è un perché. So solo che qui su sto bene e vedo meglio. La vite che scorre giù di sotto. Da qui si estende il mare, si vede bene tutto.
Allora, salgo anch'io.
Bravo Carlo, dammi la mano, sì.
Hai ragione, Paolo. Proprio bello qui.
Allora, andiamo.
Andiamo.
Okay. Grazie mille. It was really spectacular. What I forgot to mention before is that Federico is Carlo's son and Paolo's nephew. So, thank you. I'm really very, very glad to this audience, and particularly to the opportunity that the Italian Institute of Culture and the Italian Consulate and Consular gave us to perform here tonight and to open this exhibition on my father's work in his birthday week. So this is the week of my father's birthday, and I wanted to make this present to him, especially because this is the first time we brought this performance outside from Italy, and we did this because we were very much supported and very involved in this project since the beginning. And a special thank I have to give to Federica. Please join me. Federica is also founding member with me of the Montarsolo Association. We created this association a couple of years ago with a flagship which symbolizes my father's last painting, which is Amerigo Vespucci, Italian ship. And as you see, there is a lobster, which is the Italian flag, which invites us to continue to carry on this heritage. And I'm particularly glad to do that for the first time outside Italy in the United States, as the Amerigo Vespucci symbolizes the discovery of America from Italian culture in this sense tonight, and with my father and my uncle heritage in a metaphorical way. I would like really I'm very glad and really want to give a special thanks to Alessandra Valente. Please, Alessandra, come join us. Alessandra and his husband Daniele came from Italy for tonight, and without her help and without the writing of this piece for the first time in Italy and tonight in English, this wouldn't be possible. Steve, where is Steve? He is the man who suggested me for the first time to perform this piece in San Francisco, because he knew that my uncle performed here several times and thought to make a program several times. And that's why he suggested me. We were in Umbria, Shire, we were walking around, and he said, Federico, you should come to San Francisco. And that's why we are here 2 years later. So, thank you, Steve. You are our angelo custode in San Francisco. A special thanks to Eugene. Eugene, I think that you really performed brilliantly, and Paolo would really love you as a pupil.
Ah. Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Doctor, thank you very much. My father, the son of Paolo, was a pianist, and together with my uncle, they performed several times together with the opera buffa pieces, Napolitan. They perform a lot in Europe. They turn around, and you make me feel as my cousin was also here tonight. I really have to close now. I wouldn't like to do that, but I have to. I think I have also to thank our supporters from Italy, and I'm glad that you will taste some good Italian wine coming from Tenuta di Tavignano, which is our sponsor, our supporter. So let's our Amerigo Vespucci flagship sail together, and let's hope that this will be soon continued in another place. Why not in other institutes or other Italian embassies or institutes of culture in the United States or whatever. I hope that you enjoyed this evening, and thank you for being here.